It all started on a quiet morning, the kind where the birds chirp just a little louder than usual and the air feels lighter. I was sipping my coffee on the porch, watching the sun rise over the ridge, when I saw a cloud of dust rising in the distance. My land, passed down from my grandfather, sits at the edge of a rural town where everyone knows each other, or at least they think they do. The stillness of that morning was the last peace I would know for a long while. It was the day Karen crossed a line she never should have. Karen moved in 3 years ago, right at the edge of the county line, a city woman with a superiority complex as big as the SUV she drove. She made it clear from the start that she didn't like how we did things out here. She didn't like the noise my son made when he rode his dirt bike. She didn't like the way our dogs barked when someone came up the driveway. She especially didn't like me. We had words, plenty of them, but I never imagined she'd take it as far as she did. My son, Jace, is 16. He's a good kid, smart, respectful, but he's got fire in him. Takes after his mom, God rest her soul. Karen didn't see that. All she saw was a problem. She called the sheriff's office once, twice, maybe a dozen times, complaining about noise, trespassing, even made up some nonsense about Jace throwing rocks at her property. Every time they came, they left with a chuckle and a warning to Karen not to waste their time. That morning, though, something felt different. The black SUV that came barreling up my drive wasn't a police vehicle, not from around here anyway. It had lights, sure, and 2 men got out in dark tactical gear. But there was no badge, no name tags, and definitely no reason for them to be pointing rifles at my son, who was just starting to load hay into the trailer. They grabbed him, slammed him to the ground, shouting something about him being under arrest. I was on the porch with my shotgun in seconds. "Sheriff's department doesn't send men like you," I shouted. "You got 5 seconds to let him go." They didn't. Instead, one raised his weapon toward me. That was all the confirmation I needed. They didn't know what they had walked into. My land is mine, not just in name, but in principle. I know every inch, every trail, every trap I've set over the years, because where I live, we don't call 911 first. We take care of our own. As I stepped off the porch, I gave a low whistle, one Jace and I had agreed on for emergencies. He went limp under the men, feigning unconsciousness, just as we'd practiced during our drills. I disappeared around the side of the house. They chased, but they weren't from here. They didn't know what an innocent-looking patch of leaves could hide. First one fell into a pit lined with sharpened stakes. The second, spooked, turned and ran the wrong direction, right into a tripwire. The flashbang disoriented him long enough for me to get behind him. He didn't see the butt of my shotgun coming. By the time I cuffed him with his own zip ties, Jace had already called Deputy Carson, a friend of mine from high school. Carson showed up 20 minutes later, saw the mess, and just shook his head. "They ain't ours," he said, checking the fake IDs. "Private security, maybe, but who the hell's hiring goons like this to come after a teenager?" I didn't have to guess. Karen had money. Her husband was some big shot lawyer who died a year back. She'd bragged once at the town meeting about knowing people in high places. And now she'd crossed a line that even her money couldn't erase. We searched the SUV. There were restraints, sedatives, even a pre-written report with Jace's name typed in. It was clear they meant to make him disappear for a while, maybe longer. My hands shook reading that document. This wasn't just a prank, or a scare tactic. She wanted to ruin him. Carson made calls. The men were processed through the system, but it was clear someone was trying to sweep things under the rug. Within a day, the charges were quietly downgraded. Within 2, both men were bailed out. That's when I knew the law wasn't going to help us anymore. I fortified the property, not just the traps. I upgraded surveillance, reinforced the doors, and made sure Jace never went anywhere without someone nearby. Karen didn't show her face for a week. Then, like clockwork, she came driving by, slow, windows down, smirking. She knew the system protected her. She thought I'd be scared. But fear doesn't live on my land. What lives here is legacy, grit, and the will to protect what's mine. One night, motion sensors went off. I watched the feed from the cameras, 3 men creeping through the west fence line, carrying equipment. They weren't wearing uniforms this time. That was their mistake. They thought if they came in quiet, we wouldn't respond. They didn't realize they were stepping into a land laced with the memories of men who fought in wars, who knew how to build traps that maimed silently and quickly. I didn't have to lift a finger. They fell, one by one, before even making it to the barn. By the time the sheriff arrived, I had them lined up, zip-tied, bruised, and crying for their mothers. The authorities tried again to clean it up. But this time, I had video. I sent it to every local station, every contact I had. I made it public. Karen was arrested 2 days later for conspiracy, unlawful detainment, and assault with intent to harm a minor. Her smug look was finally gone. But the damage she caused will linger. Not just in the bruises on Jace's wrists or the fear in his eyes every time a car drives by too slowly. It lingers in the quiet moments, the ones we used to treasure. I walk the land every morning now, not for peace, but for vigilance. This is the story of how a Karen thought she could take on a family rooted deep in the earth, and how that earth rose up to protect its own. I didn't want violence, but I wasn't going to let my son become a victim of someone's twisted sense of justice. Not on my land, not ever. The air had changed since that night. The kind of shift you can't always explain, but you feel it in your bones. After catching those 2 men skulking through the woods with high-grade surveillance equipment, I realized this wasn't just about Karen anymore. Someone else had picked up her cause, or perhaps she had never acted alone in the first place. Either way, the message was clear: they weren't done with us. And we sure as hell weren't done with them. Jace barely spoke the next morning. He sat at the kitchen table, staring into a bowl of cereal that had long gone soggy. His hands trembled, not out of fear but restraint. I knew that look well. It was the same one I wore after the first time I was ambushed in Kandahar. The anger, the confusion, the need for action, all bottled up and capped by a world that wouldn't understand. I didn't ask him how he felt. I didn't try to give him some hollow reassurance. I just poured him another cup of coffee and said, "They'll come again." He nodded. Jake and his team didn't leave. They moved into the guest cabin I had built years ago for hunting season. Now it became a command post. We upgraded the gear, synchronized comms, set up overlapping patrol paths, and installed perimeter sensors that could distinguish between deer and a man in boots. My land was no longer just protected, it was locked down. That week, I started reaching out. Old contacts, men I'd served with, folks in town who had quietly supported me but stayed silent during the trial. Once word got around that someone had been trying to target my family again, a few stepped up. Supplies started showing up at the gate: trail cams, ammo, motion-activated lights. No names attached, just quiet solidarity. In a place like ours, loyalty runs deep even when voices stay low. And still, nothing. No more intrusions. No more drones. Just silence. But I didn't trust it. Then one evening, I received a package. No return address. Inside was a flash drive and a burner phone. I plugged the drive into my old laptop, the one disconnected from any network, isolated for situations just like this. There were photos. Dozens. Me, Jace, our house, our routines, even a picture of Jace at school, talking to a girl he liked. There was a recording, too. A man's voice, distorted. "You think this is over. It's not. She might be locked away, but some promises go deeper than steel bars. You made a mistake. You made her a martyr." My blood turned to ice. It wasn't just surveillance. It was a warning, a declaration of intent. They wanted to make an example of us now. I handed the phone to Jake. He popped the back off, pulled the SIM, and crushed the device under his boot. "They're escalating," he said, scanning the tree line. "They're not just watching. They're planning." We changed everything after that. Routines, paths, where we slept, how we moved. Jace started training again. Not just drills, but serious preparation. He learned to handle every firearm on the property. He practiced escape routes blindfolded. The kid who had once just wanted to ride his dirt bike and go to school now carried a sidearm under his flannel shirt. And not once did he complain. Not once did he say he wanted out. He'd seen what they were capable of. And he wasn't about to be caught off guard again. A week passed. Then 2. We spotted another vehicle parked just outside the county line. Different plates every time, always the same make and model, black Ford Expedition. Windows tinted, never stayed longer than 10 minutes. Always drove away if someone got too close. Jake said it was recon. I believed him. We started keeping a vehicle parked at the end of our driveway with cameras pointing out. If they were going to watch us, we'd be watching right back. Then it happened. 2 nights later, all the cameras on the north side went dark. No warning, no tripwire alarms, just black feeds. Jake and I split up. He circled the south ridge. I went north through the creek bed. I moved slow, rifle tight in hand, senses heightened beyond reason. And then I saw it, a group of 4, dressed in black, moving single file, low to the ground. One held a jammer, the others carried suppressed weapons. They weren't here to scare us this time. They were here to finish what Karen started. I radioed Jake. 4 intruders, armed, near the hollow, moving west toward the barn. Copy. I see 2 more by the east fence. Same gear, 6 total, trained, coordinated. We didn't wait. I triggered the flash rig on the barn's corner. The burst lit up the entire yard like noon on a summer day. That was the signal. Jace, who'd been hiding in the root cellar with a scoped rifle in line of sight to the clearing, opened fire. Not to kill, just to warn. But when one of the intruders returned fire, everything changed. I moved like I hadn't in years. Quick, clean, no hesitation. 2 of them dropped from tranquilizer rounds fired from Jake's suppressed rifle. One tried to retreat, stepping straight into a net trap we'd hidden between the brush. He went down hard, screaming into the night. The last 3 scattered. One disappeared into the woods. The other 2 surrendered after a standoff that lasted less than 5 minutes. When it was over, we had 4 men zip-tied under the barn's floodlight. I asked one of them why. Why, keep coming after us? Because you embarrassed them, he said, eyes bloodied but proud. Because they want to make sure no one else does what you did. That told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't just Karen's personal war. This was about control, about power, about making sure no one thought they could stand up to the system. We didn't call the sheriff. We sent the men back to wherever they came from, without gear, without answers, and with a clear message: this land is not yours. We protect our own. Since that night, the surveillance has stopped. No more drones, no more parked cars, but we remain ready, always watching, always prepared, because once you've defended your home with everything you have, once you've seen the lengths to which people will go just to break you, you never go back to sleep with both eyes closed. And if they come again, they'll find a family forged in fire and a land that bites back harder every time.